Hi. Okay, so after my last video, I said that I would be talking about this specific rifle and how I set it up for being able to do real general purpose stuff, including everything from, close in snapshots, mid-range stuff, and the long range stuff. And I told you that I would have a video showing what I have done to this rifle. Before I do that, I want to make sure that I'm very clear about something. I have referred to this as the Machaira idea. And that is taken from another group, the Bang Steel Long Range Shooting School, that really just said you can set up a rifle that is probably already in your closet and enable it to do a lot of things, including long range stuff. And they use that term just because it is a word that describes a general purpose blade, a general purpose sword. Well, this is your general purpose rifle. So I am not saying that this is the only way to set one up. And by the way, the guys at Bang Steel say that it should be, they don't have a length requirement, but they say it should be under 9 pounds, have a 3 to 10 power scope, 3 to 9 at minimum, Bipod, 20 MOA base. That's pretty much it. That's pretty simple. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on this one, but that's the whole idea. This is something that you can do, and by me going over these features, I'm not saying this is the only way. It's not necessarily the best way. It was a way that worked out really, really well for me, and I'm just sharing the things that I've done in setting up my rifle, some of the things that I ran into, so that you can pay attention when you're setting up your rifle. All right, let's start off. Let's go front to back on this gun. We're going to start off talking about suppressors. Now, suppressors are something that a lot of people a little bit questionable about, and for a number of reasons. Number one, you can't hunt with a suppressor in some jurisdictions. If that's the case, ignore this part. But where you can, I'm going to talk about the benefits of the suppressor both for hunting and for long distance shooting, and there are different reasons. So the obvious thing here is it does add length, it does add weight. It makes the gun less handy to have a suppressor on there. But what's the payoff? The payoff is in the hunting field, even with full power 308 ammunition, not subsonic, full power ammunition, all you hear is a crack. Pretty loud crack, but it's I would say it's equivalent to shooting a 22 rifle outside. Not horrible. It's not going to leave a ringing in your ears. And because your ears are not ringing and you're not dealing with that huge blast, you can hear bullet impacts on deer very clearly. So even at close range, if you're in the woods and there's a deer 50, 60 yards out and you manage to get a shot at it and it runs the instant you hit it, you know that you made a hit because you heard that smack as that bullet impacted the deer. That's a pretty big deal. And something else that really isn't talked about is the fact that, in my experience, deer don't seem to hear it. They really don't. Or if they do hear it, they don't associate that noise with anything that is threatening, which means that, and I shot at a deer one time, 135 yards away. I didn't take into account scope offset. There was a hay bale in front of me. My bullet impacted the hay bale, but the gun went off. The deer never lifted his head. He kept his head down, eating the whole time. I was able to run the bolt, reposition a little bit, and get a shot off, and took that deer. I've also had situations where there's a group of deer. I would shoot one deer, it would drop or run off, and the rest of the deer would just stand there not understanding what had happened because they didn't hear or recognize what that sound was. It's kind of cool. Anyway, so that's the benefit in the hunting field. In the long range shooting though, it does something else. It mitigates recoil a tremendous amount. I kind of liken the amount that it reduces recoil to, I have a bolt action 5.56 rifle. And without a suppressor, that gun has pretty much a similar recoil to this thing with it. That's pretty dramatic. So that means that the gun doesn't jump as much. It doesn't come back on my shoulder as much. And you may say, you know, the 308 doesn't have a huge amount of recoil anyway, so what's the big deal? And you're right, it's not a Magnum. And if you're out at a scout rifle class and all of your shots are being taken from standing or sitting or kneeling, 308's not going to hurt you. But if you do a lot of shooting down in prone, your body can't move. So when that gun is up against your shoulder, it is going to hit you, and you are going to feel it, and it's going to leave a bruise, and that can lead to things like flinching. So pretty big deal to reduce the recoil. There's other ways to reduce recoil. You could go with a muzzle brake. A lot of competitive shooters do that. They're noisy, they're obnoxious, however, they really work. They really knock down the recoil. So one way or another, if you're going to be including long-range shooting in what you expect a general-purpose rifle to do, you do need to mitigate the recoil. One note on that, the first day of the class that I took, I was getting really inconsistent results, and my suppressor kept loosening on the barrel. I didn't mention that to the instructors until the end of the day when they said, they're like, "Ah, Steve, you need to get that fixed." So that night I went out, I cleaned up the threads, I put blue Loctite on it, it's down nice and solid, doesn't back out. The second day, my results were completely different. Very, very consistent and very accurate. So pay attention to mounting systems, pay attention to what it's doing up there, make sure that it is going to remain in exactly the same place each and every time. Next thing to talk about, minor thing, but you notice I have a little piece of Picatinny rail there. So that's because this is a general purpose rifle. I don't know when I might need to use it. It might be at night. The ability to attach a white light, I think, is important. I'm going to talk about the sling next. I have on here the 3-point Ching sling. You need something that has a loop here, and whether it is the Ching sling or the Rhodesian, this is important. Inside 300 yards, you loop up into this thing, and it is going to give you a lot of stability. As long as your elbow is rested on something, it creates a lock for your forearm. So your forearm is locked into the gun. It gives you enough stability for shots out to 300 yards pretty well. And then the obvious benefit, you can still use it as a carry strap, either American style, or you can go with African style, which is the preferred way because that is just a lot faster to get into action. All right, next thing to talk about, bipods. You need a bipod, and the long-range community uses fairly big and heavy bipods for a good reason. If you're trying to get the most out of your rifle at long range, weight is your friend. If you're trying to make long-range shots, that's the preferred way to go. This is a general purpose rifle, not a specialty rifle. You don't need to be great at long-range shooting, you just need to be decent at it. And you can be decent at it with a much lighter weight bipod. For a while, I was using both a Harris and a Magpul quick detach bipod. Problem with those are the front sling swivel. You need to attach that front sling swivel to the bipod itself. So when you take it off, you not only have to unscrew that, you have to reposition your sling swivel. Not a huge deal, but it makes it not all that quick. I ended up switching to this. This is the Spartan Javelin bipod. This thing weighs a whopping 8.5 ounces, and this is the heaviest model they make. It's the ProTac model, and it attaches with a little socket up here. So drop it in there, spread out the legs, you put it in one way, and you have some rotation, turn it around, and it's locked. Are there better and more heavy-duty bipods? Absolutely. Does this work? Oh yeah. And what's cool about this is that if I am going to be hunting, I just take it off. It's not part of my overall weight. Overall weight on this whole gun, including the bipod, is just over 9 pounds. It's about 9 pounds, 5 ounces, I believe. Pull this off, and I am under 9 pounds. This is hunting configuration. that's long-range shooting configuration. So very quick and easy to adjust the legs. A little pricey, but I think it's worth it. But yeah, you can go with something else, but you do need a bipod of some sort. Next, we're going to talk about rings and mounts. If you have a Steyr, you're kind of stuck on your mount. The mount is built into the rifle. Most other rifles, you can get a 20 MOA base. That is important. When I do my video on scopes, I'll explain how important that is and what goes into that. But suffice to say, you need a 20 MOA base if you're going to be using this at longer ranges. So this doesn't have that. So it turns out Burris makes what they call their Signature Z rings. The Burris Signature Z rings have little plastic inserts. And at first I'm like, plastic? Seriously? Well, they work really well. It allows you to build in 20 MOA worth of cant into the thing. So this got me an additional 20 MOA worth of adjustability for taking those longer range shots. They're steel, they're solid, they're not quick detach, which means that your backup iron sights are now completely useless, but they work really, really well. So you do need that. Another accessory that you need is here. This is a bubble level. That's important, and it's important that it is installed correctly. Again, the first day of my shooting class, mine was not leveled properly, and I was really fighting it all day. But if you get that set up properly to your reticle, it makes a world of difference. It's one thing that you take a look at every single time you take a shot. The other accessory for a scope is the throw lever. So I didn't really understand what the big deal was. I had seen throw levers, but I'm like, what's the big deal? Well, long range shooting, if you're taking a shot, say it's 600 yards, and you're up at maximum magnification, which on this is only 10 power, you take that shot, the gun bounces. When it settles back down, sometimes the target is not in your field of view anymore. Where did it go? Well, you can lift your head and you can look around and you can, oh, okay. Or you can reach your hand up, you can change back to 5 power or 4 power, find your target, reposition, and then slam it right back over to maximum magnification. It's really handy. I was very glad that I had that. So throw lever. Next thing, the scope itself. I'm not going to get into too many details other than to say you really do want a couple of things. The low end magnification should be no more than 3 power. In my experience, I can take the close-in snapshots with both eyes open as long as it's a maximum of 3 power. 2.5 power is better. 1 power, there's a lot of people that argue that that is required. I don't think it's required, and it might be better. It might be better for you, but 3 power works just fine. No more than that, though. On the top end, this is a 10 power. 10 power is what the U.S. military snipers used for years in the Loophole Mark IV fixed 10 power scope. You can see targets quite easily out to 1,000 yards. You can discern fairly small targets out to that range. You really don't need any more. There are some scopes out there that are a 2 to 12 or a 3 to 12. Those might be just fine. I've seen some 3 to 15s. Yeah, 15's fine. You really don't need that, though. You need 10 power. You can get away with 9. You might be able to get away with 8 if it's a really, really crisp, clear optic. But, you know, the 3 to 9s, the 3 to 10s, 2 to 10s, something in that range is really the preferred type of situation. You also really do want to figure out a zero stop. This scope did not come with one. This is the Night Force SHV. The cool thing about the Night Force SHV is you actually can make a zero stop for it. When I get into the scope presentation, I'll go more into detail on that, but you can make it using a piece of conduit. 3/4 inch conduit happens to be the right diameter to put over this cap. Just file it down to the right size and make your own zero stop. So that works. Last thing to cover is length of pull. So you scout rifle guys, I know shorter is better. A 12 and a half to 13-inch length of pull is what we have always used for very good reason. It makes the gun a lot quicker up to your shoulder. And it means that when you come up to your shoulder, the gun is going to land in the pocket. Instead of, if it's too long, it tends to end up on the outside. You want it right there in the pocket, and a shorter length of pull helps with that. However, when you go down into prone, you end up scooting up on the scope quite a bit. You shorten the eye relief because of your body position. In that case, it helps to have a little bit more length of pull. I added one of the stock spacers here, kind of as a compromise. It was enough in prone, but it's still not too much for the snapshots. So think about length of pull, and it just takes a little bit of rethinking how your stock spacers when you go to this general purpose type of situation. So there is how I have set up mine. Again, there's not a set of rules. You don't have to do everything that this one has. This isn't like a scout rifle where if it doesn't meet certain criteria, it doesn't qualify. If you can do everything that you want to do, you can do the close stuff, you can do the medium stuff, you can do the long stuff, all with one rifle without changing up the gun, you've accomplished it. That's the idea. Making sure that you have that one gun that if duty calls or if nature calls, you grab that gun and you're ready to go. That's the whole idea here. Nothing mystical, nothing magical about it. That's how I've set mine up. Let me know how you've set yours up. I'm Steve Clifford. Thanks for watching.